Thank you, Mr. Sharma, for sharing those words with us and telling us Tata Group's vision and support and contribution in the nation building. Thank you.
We will now open the floor for question and answer session, but we request our audience to kindly be brief. The questions can be put in general to our guest, or you may direct it to the specific speaker.
My name is Yogesh Gokhale. I'm from Terry. Sir, taking a cue from the southern discourse that was talked about previously, my question to Mr. Sharma that, sir, how can we think about reporting sustainability in Indian context? Because very often we use the Western tools to report our sustainability solutions as well as efficiencies. And in that, we underreport, misreport, we do not report many activities which are actually done as a part of our sustainability solution portfolio. So can you provide your experience as a part of your previous work of sustainability executive in Tata's? Thanks, sir.
So thank you. I think that's an excellent question. And I think the Honorable Minister and I, we both agree that it's necessary to change the terms of discourse. And today, when you see any agency which is rating on sustainability or any other parameter, it is always with a prism which is not defined or not situated in our local context. And therefore, I would say that it is important for us to look at frameworks, to define frameworks which bring out the importance of what we do, the criticality of what we have done, and how unique is that? Because as I was saying, the Honorable Minister pointed out the kind of progress that India has made in terms of our walk towards the path to net zero and the commitments that we have achieved much before our stated time frame. But, you know, I just went yesterday to the website of the Global Climate Change Tracker. And if you go there, it says India's actions are woefully inadequate. You can look at it, you can Google it right now, and you will see that. Now you see, that's where the discourse changes. That is what, as he said, that you're talking about phasing out of coal. Why are you talking only about that? Why are you not talking about everything on the table? But that will change only when we do solid work on the ground, because reporting is just a function of what actually you are performing as. You derive frameworks which are suited to your context, and you have the confidence to put that across in the best possible manner that suits national interest.
I just add a bit. Now, you just heard the mention of Global Climate Action or Climate Change Tracker. Now, it has named itself the Global Climate Change Tracker, whatever. What is it? Who is running it? I mean, is it global? Who owns it? I mean, I don't know. Now, so that's what's happening. You know, the countries put up small groups which come out with such publications, right? Now, here you have a really credible institution. Now, I would like Terry to do something like that, to actually carry out a study about what different countries have done or are doing in terms of what they pledged and whether they have lived up to it. I mean, we've heard talks since Kyoto about $100 billion being passed on for, you know, the climate action. It's not happened, not a penny has materialized. And we've just heard talk, no action whatsoever. Nobody, we were the only country which achieved its pledges, which we made in COP21 in Paris. No other country has done that. But nobody talks about it. So you have these small NGOs coming out with this. Let some, I mean, credible institutions come out with such studies from our point of view and from what is it, the reality. Now, I'll tell you one more example of hypocrisy. So suddenly, after Bill Gates wrote a book on climate and science, suddenly people started talking about going to net zero and things like that. And then, there came this talk about green hydrogen and how the feedstock needs to change, and green ammonia, how the feedstock needs to change, etc. Incidentally, in 2018, I had called an expert from the International Energy Agency to give me a talk on green hydrogen, what its prospects are. Now, that expert came to India, but his presentation was that, I mean, it's not really feasible now, maybe 20 years from now, right? That's what he said. But our Prime Minister, he launched this green hydrogen mission. Today, we already have manufacturing facilities for 5.8 million tons per annum of green hydrogen manufacturing facilities in various stages. Land is being acquired, etc. Companies have, tied up orders and they have announced plans in different parts. And this is the largest capacity coming up in the world. Now, when the developed country realized that, I mean, we will be world leaders in green hydrogen and green ammonia, now they don't talk about green hydrogen. They talk about clean hydrogen. And that, why clean hydrogen? They talk about clean hydrogen because they can make it from natural gas. But you make 1 kilogram of hydrogen from natural gas, you are releasing 11 kilograms of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, or you capture it and sequester it. Now, CCUS has not been commercially tried anywhere in the world. We had a pilot that has worked, but I mean, commercial capacity CCUS is not there. Mr. Kerry had come, just after I joined in 17 or 18 or something like that. And he talked about net zero. After that, Bill Gates. I said, well, how will you go to net zero? I mean, you can't have round-the-clock renewable energy. Storage is expensive. And in fact, you people have been talking about climate all these years. You've done nothing, precious nothing. The total capacity for manufacturing batteries around the world is just at that time, it was just about 5,000 megawatts or something like that. I mean, you don't have round-the-clock renewable energy. So what about net zero? So he said nuclear and small modular reactors. So I said, where will you store the waste? And how will you make sure that this waste does not leak out? I mean, he talked about CCUS. I said, okay, fine. Even when it becomes commercially viable, well, we'll store the carbon dioxide which you have captured. So he mentioned, and other experts have mentioned, that we'll store it in the voids left by pumping out oil. I said that how will you ensure that it doesn't leak back up again? Now, there are no answers to this. The world talks about net zero. How will you get there? But you start asking these questions, they don't have any answer. They don't have any answer. You can't get to net zero unless you have round-the-clock renewability. I came out with a bid for 1,000 megawatt hours of storage. The rate I got was 10 rupees per kilowatt hour, 10 rupees per unit for 1 hour of storage. My renewable energy cost today is 2 rupees 60 paisa. 4 times is the cost for storing it for 1 hour. How can I give, suppose I shut my thermal power plants, how can I give round-the-clock electricity? Or how can they give round-the-clock electricity? They just talk. They just talk. And this is all, addressed at us, at the developing countries, basically. The idea is to talk back to them.
Thank you, sir, for your enlightening and inspireful answer. Can we have more question, please?
Good evening, dignitaries. I'm Sheen from the Sustainable Buildings Department, and I've been really excited by the announcement of Ministry of Renewable Power on green energy access for all. Concurrently, we have been talking about net zero energy buildings. I was wondering if Honorable Minister could shed light how it would help on consumer level for the buildings with green energy access for all policies. Sure.
Can you repeat yourself slowly? Keep the mic slightly louder. Yeah.
I've been very excited about the Green Energy Access for All announcement that the Ministry of Renewable Energy made some time ago. And concurrently, we talk about net energy zero buildings. I was wondering how would they integrate in the current policy framework to satisfy net zero energy buildings in the future? Because the market is very low on that side right now.
Oh, access to energy at the consumer level. Right. Now, our government has done 3 or 4 things. Number one, we ensured universal access. Imagine there were 18,452 villages and hundreds and thousands of hamlets which had still not been connected to electricity. So we started this around 17, 18 when I joined. And we connected every village and every hamlet. And thereafter, we launched the Saubhagya and we connected every home. We collected 29 million homes, right? Now, we extended the grid by adding about almost 183,000 circuit kilometers so that we connected every corner of our country into one grid. And then we spent about 2,40,000 crores in strengthening the distribution systems around the country. So we connected every home, and we added capacities. We added almost about 190,000 megawatts of generation capacity. So we converted our country from power deficit to power surplus. At that time, now we are not surplus, mind you. The demand has grown, but at that time we converted our country to power surplus. We built capacity to transfer 112,000 megawatts from one corner of the country to another. We strengthened the distribution systems. So we connected every village, every hamlet, and every home. Some homes I had to connect by using solar with battery through the off-grid methods, because you had a few clusters of homes on a faraway hill. Running a line was more expensive than having distributed generation. So we've done that. Now for industry, what I did was I announced a green open access. I said that as far as my greening my grid, my mantra was that first of all electrify the economy. Second is green the electricity, right? So as I said, I have added 43% of my capacity from renewable energy. In energy terms, about 24% of the light is actually green, right? So in energy terms, it's 24%. But in energy terms, I aim to reach almost 50-60%. And so I'm greening the electricity. The other thing was that you had the industry having captive, 70,000 megawatts of captive. Now, all that captive was thermal based, coal, diesel. So we came out with a policy. We said green open access. We said that, okay, you can set up capacity anywhere in the country, renewable energy capacity, either by yourself or through a developer. We'll give you free transmission if you set up before 25. In fact, I think I'll extend that deadline by a year, before 25. And it has to be green, so that you transfer from thermal to renewables. And I wrote to all the industry captains, I wrote to Tata's as well, that now announce dates for going green. And most industries are doing that. And I'm actually chasing that so that this happens. And free transmission is a huge spur. And also the fact that renewable energy today is 2 rupees 65, whereas if you talk about the industrial tariff, it's somewhere, it varies between 7 rupees to 9 rupees. So it saves money. So that is happening. Then I put another rule on, in the rule books. And the rule is law. And that rule says that any consumer can tell the distribution company that I want this percentage of my electricity to be green. So right now it's 24% already green, but tomorrow you can write to your distribution company that I want 50% of my electricity to be green. And that is bound to give you that much of green energy. So I'm creating the demand as well. And I'm adding capacity fast, but I think it will become faster because I've just now, I got a legislation passed which provides for stiff penalties for not meeting the targets for going green. So we are greening rapidly. And as Siddharth said, that the industry is also greening. He's announced that Tata's will go green by 45. That's what we are doing. And we are way ahead of the world. It's just that, some sponsored NGO, small NGO, probably run by 2 or 3 persons, has put up a website. Similarly, you have the International Energy Agency. Now, it calls itself the International Energy Agency. It was formed, when you had the oil shock. It is an organization of petroleum consuming countries, the developed countries, the OECD countries. The membership requirement is that you should be a member of the OECD. Only 31 countries are members. Yet it calls itself International Energy Agency. And it publishes books on the global climate action and transition and things like that. But from what point of view? OECD point of view. And that's what the world is. So, yeah.
We will have one last question from the audience.
Hello.
Mhm. Great, great.
Hello, sir. My name is Shireen, and my question is directed to our Honorable Minister. Sir, we have, thank you, sorry. So basically, my question is related to corporates. How do you think that we should improve the efficiency of accounting and reporting of corporates in India, so as to motivate them to invest in solutions, sustainable solutions, and adoption of sustainable solutions?
There are two aspects to this. One aspect is as far as the energy, electricity is concerned. So one, I'm greening the grid. The second is that the law says, the rules which we have put on the statute book says that obligated entities will have to achieve a certain percentage of their consumption from renewable energy sources, right? And entities under the law are distribution companies, because consumers take electricity from distribution companies. But you have a choice. You have a choice not to take electricity from distribution companies, but to take electricity by open access, right? Now, if you are an open access consumer, or if you are a captive consumer, if you have a captive, then that that has been brought under this ambit of obligated entity. So if I have a captive, I am a huge steel plant, Tata Steel or whatever, or Jindal Steel, and I have a captive. Now then they have become obligated entities. So right now I think the RPO, renewable purchase obligation, is in the region of about 23%, 23.5% for this year. So they have to achieve that. That means 23.5% of their electricity must come from renewables, apart from the grid. Apart from the grid. So that mandate is there. Then we passed the Energy Conservation Act, Amendment Act. In that, we provided that we lay down mandates for feedstocks also to be changed from fossil to non-fossil. So we'll prescribe a trajectory that in the first year you must change, let's say, 20%, depending on how technology develops. For example, steel, green steel. So there are pilots on green steel. But to let the pilot be successful, we'll come out with 2 pilots ourselves. Some companies have come out with their own pilots. So once those pilots are successful, once the technology is established, we'll place that mandate. That in the first year, you must reduce your carbon content by this percent, in the second year by this percent, etc., by changing the feedstock. So we are doing that. Then we already have industries. So this is the second strand. The third strand is we already have, under the Energy Conservation Act, this perform achieve trade scheme, under which again we designate industries as obligated industries, and they have to reduce their specific energy consumption. For every unit of product, the energy which they consume will have to come down. So we've already put mandates on many large industries. Many of them have achieved it. Many of them have overachieved it. So they have got energy saving certificates, which they sell. The industries which have not achieved it have to buy energy saving certificates or pay the penalty. So it's working.
So I'm Suruchi.
I'll just add one point to what the minister said. I think one is, it's a very complex problem. India is a very price sensitive market. And therefore, it's important that there is a policy and a regulatory framework which provides a uniform playing field. So if you're talking about green steel, or if you're talking about anything else, no company can move ahead on its own unless everybody moves, because there will be a first mover disadvantage. They will get priced out of the market. So therefore, that's where the importance of regulation and the policy comes in.
So what we do, Siddharth, is actually we don't mandate any one unit. We mandate a whole sector. Yeah.
And the second part, where we can keep talking about sustainability ad nauseum, and we can talk about it in boardrooms. We can talk about it. Will not happen unless you have a business case for sustainability. Unless sustainability is at the heart of your strategy. And we must realize that when you're transitioning from to a low carbon economy, while there are huge and immense challenges, there are limitless business opportunities. And I just give you the example of Tata Motors, which has bet big on EV mobility, right? And has completely changed their business case. You look at their financials 7 years ago and you look at their financials now, and you see it's riding on a absolute growth trajectory which will not be seen. I will again give an example of Tata Power, the switch to renewables, and they made a business case for renewables in terms of solarization of pumps, microgrids, etc. So unless businesses realize that this has to be at the core of their strategy and there are opportunities to be had, it will only remain a dead letter in the thing. So it requires a very complex ecosystem, including very rightly the policy framework that the government of India announces to make everybody move, but it's also a business case.
So I'm Suruchi, and since the climate action tracker just came up, I just wanted to mention, so I'm from TERI, and we are part of the climate transparency network at the international level, which basically over the last 3 years or 4 years, we've been basically looking at the G20 countries and the performance with regard to different goalposts that they have with regard to the mitigation goals and for building climate resilience. And we were the only institute, I would want to say this year actually, because it just came up, who actually put a rebuttal to the climate action tracker when India was not just rated as highly inadequate, but severely inadequate with regard to its contributions in the international, to meet the international climate goals of 1.5 degrees. So Terry had a discussion with the climate action tracker, and as a result of the discussion, because we said India never committed to the 1.5 degree goal, our then Prime Minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh, actually talked about being below 2 degrees centigrade and never exceeding the limits of the developed countries. And that's what brought India from the severely inadequate to the highly inadequate. And of course, I would like to commit that Terry is here to say the India story to the world, and we've been doing that all over the years, and we would continue to do that. Thank you.
You see, what and that is utter nonsense. What the climate action tracker, whatever excuse it has given. In fact, I thought of my ministry writing to it. Then we thought that we should not give it importance. The idea is that you don't judge a country. Number one, nobody has given you a right to judge. Number two, who are you? Who is climate action tracker? I mean, I don't know you. And how do you sort of take it upon yourself that you can speak for the world and call yourself global? These are valid questions. And the thing is that you don't judge people by what ambition they declare. That okay, I'll try to. I'm for limiting the rise in global rise in temperature to 1.5 degrees. That's irrelevant. What is relevant is what you have done. Right? That is what is relevant, number one. And what is relevant is what is your scale? How do you measure it? What are the variables which you measure? For example, per capita emissions. Who has reduced their per capita emissions? And the per capita emissions of the global north has not come down at all. I mean, they all have 3 or 4 SUVs per house. Yeah, utter nonsense.
In fact, if you see, we are talking about climate change here, but if you look at finance, and that determines the cost of capital for every country. Now, there are only 3 universally accepted rating agencies. They're Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch. And I remember during my days in the Ministry of Finance, we used to make presentations to them every year, saying that on no metric, you compare any metric, India does not deserve a BBB- rating. You cannot say that we are just 1 grade above investment. And they would not listen because, again, the discourse is so flawed. And I'll just give you an example. When the global financial crisis of 2008 occurred, Iceland, which collapsed, and there was a contagion, was rated as AAA+. Okay? So, I mean, these are things which we need to have a very conscious thing, but we need to have our own frameworks and we need to have our own voice. And we need to be able to convey in international gatherings that, we are talking on the basis of fact and not on the basis of supposition.
What I would like Terry to do would be to carry out a study about which countries have made a real impact on reducing emissions, etc. And then publish that, come out with a website of its own, and do that on facts. Who has actually done something? Which country has actually done something? Which country has just talked about it? Let's do it. Huh?
You mentioned what Terry should be doing. This is something which I had also raised 2 days ago in the thing, and I have a piece coming out which essentially says India is on track, and practically no other large emitter is on track. And I will not go into details on this, but on the climate action tracker, something very intriguing. About 5 years ago, when they did their assessment, India was shown as being on track. And suddenly in 1 year, it changed. And suddenly in 1 year, they changed India from being on track to being off. And I sent them my assessment, which was the opposite, that India is on track, whereas the others that use are not necessarily so. I never got a reply to that. So this is why I agree entirely with you that we, Terry, will definitely try and take up. We should not just focus on saying we are on track. We should increasingly focus on saying you are not on track. No? This is the important.
This would be the last question.
Yeah. I'm S.N. Mishra from Terry Sess. And my question is to the Honorable Minister. So first of all, this year's Climate Change Performance Index 2023 puts India at 8th place, and there is no major economy in that Climate Performance Index is doing as better as India. This probably Global Climate Tracker is telling later. And there is no, and there are 3 places there is nobody, because nobody is meeting the targets, but India among the best amongst all major.
And we are at 8th place, but I think 4 or 5 places are vacant.
Vacant, sir.
ये क्या है साहब? Nonsensical है. I mean, you start from serial 5 instead of starting from serial 1. So if you start from serial 5, you are at serial 8. No? Otherwise, if you start from serial 1, the best as serial 1, then we will be at serial 3.
We will be.
Yeah, what I have in mind is that I'll start an NGO. I have funds. I'll start an NGO, and I will call it I will call it the international or the international sort of evaluation for actions regarding climate change, and give it a global name. And it will be 1 or 2 persons, and they will publish data as per we wanted, putting us at number 1. It's utter nonsense. This is a waste of time. Basically, we are the only major economy whose actions are consonant to the sub 2 degree rise in temperature. The only major economy. आप बताइए कि और कौन क्या कर रहा है?
Very true, sir. So my question is now still that the carbon trajectory has to go down in any case, because it's a transboundary issue. So when is India peaking its GHG emissions, and when are we stopping our thermal plants, coal-based thermal plants? There must be some plan with the government. Thank you, sir.
Again, I mentioned this when I was speaking. Basically, we are not going to retire our thermal power plants unless you have round-the-clock renewable energy, which is affordable. You can't right now round-the-clock renewable energy using battery storage, lithium-ion batteries costs me 12 rupees 60 paise per unit. I got a bid which I accepted because that was the lowest bid, and I am giving VGF for that to make sure that it becomes viable. But this is not possible on a large scale. There is another storage system, that is the pumped hydro. So we have about 4,700 megawatts of pumped hydro. That is also a storage system. I have about 30,000 megawatts, which have been surveyed and which will come up under construction. That will take 3 years, 4 years. Now, before this storage comes in, there's no question of thermal being, or the fossil fuel being retired, either here or in the United States or anywhere. They also will not be able to retire their thermal capacities. They use gas and they use shale. Before, either they add more nuclear at a rapid pace, or storage becomes viable. The number 1. And carbon footprint, I'm already reducing. As I said, my electricity is already 24% green. Now, can you imagine? I have already reduced my emissions intensity by 33%. That's huge for a country which is just started developing. My demand has just started growing up. My demand went up by about 7% in the first quarter of this year, 7.8%. And in August, it's gone up by almost in July it went up by about 9.5%. In August it's gone up by almost 21%. I have just started growing, and I'll continue to grow for the next 3 decades. So I will be a middle, absolutely. But I need space to develop, just like you did. And in any case, I am responsible for just 4% of the legacy carbon dioxide load. We are a population 17%. So absolutely, I'm very clear in my mind. We are going to grow. We will grow responsibly. Our pace of addition of renewable energy capacity will be second to none. It is second to none. Bloomberg rated us as the most attractive destination for investment in renewables. I have set a target of 50 gigawatts of renewables, every year. Can you believe that? 50,000 megawatts every year of renewables. That's a target I have set for myself. Nobody can match that.
Thank you, audience, for this discussion. Now we'll move on. Thank you.
What an evening we have had. Moving towards the formal closing of the event, we request Dr. Vibha Dhawan, Director General of TERI, to kindly propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Honorable Minister Shri R.K. Singh Ji, Mr. Siddharth Sharma, CEO of Tata Trust, our chairman, family members of our founder, Mr. Darbari Seth, guests, and my dear colleagues. What a day, I should say. It's such a thought-provoking lectures that after that, I hardly have anything to say. But I'll still say something, and starting with our founder, because many of my colleagues, perhaps they have joined TERI, and they never had the privilege of meeting Mr. Darbari Seth. In fact, he mentored us in the initial stages, and I was very fortunate because I had my lab in Gwalpahari, and Mr. Seth, in spite of being chairman of over a dozen companies of Tata's, always had time to visit that place. He had a sort of twinkle in his eye when he'll discuss with you, what are you doing? And a memory that after 2 years also, he'll say, I told you to do this particular thing. Have you done it? So you were always on your toes. And when you are there, being a biotechnologist, I knew going with Mr. Seth is he'll ask you what appeared on the net yesterday evening. So he was so well read, and he'll tell you so many things on the way that you look back and say that they are guiding us even today. And one instance, which many of you might have seen in me also, which I learned from him, he told me one incident. He said one day he was playing and he came home crying, and his bua, his aunt, asked him what happened. And he said that there were kids and they have beaten me. And he said, instead of saying or consoling me, she gave me another tight slap. And she said, you have to resolve your issues when they occur. So therefore, don't leave them for tomorrow. You have to resolve it today itself. The other thing which he also, in a way, he taught, like when we used to Gwalpahari, and he'll always say, don't build buildings. You first create work. Whether you are hiring anyone, ensure that you have at least, you are overstressed to 120% plus. But before you hire a person, you must create work of 80% plus, but because otherwise that person won't work. And that is where that work should be the innovations. So think about what you are unable to do and hire a person and then start working on it. So, and like consumer awareness. So one day we were just coming and he said, what's wrong in this advertisement? And I said, nothing. So it was written over there, beauty bar. So he taught me beauty, they can't write soap because they are not using the oil content, fat content, which should be there in the soap. So that way, you always look into what kind of information is provided to you is someone trying to mislead you? And if you go back, you really get into, yes, he told me this thing. And so those memories are always fresh in our mind. And we are very fortunate because the culture which we have in Terry, it was actually built by Mr. Darbari Seth. And I'm sure today he must be very happy wherever he is, that we are remembering him with such thought-provoking lectures. The path, or the achievements of the government or what India is doing, which were told by Mr. R.K. Singh, I'll say they are doing much beyond it. Time was short, so perhaps he could not tell everything, because if you look at India, the way we are growing, I always say we are definitely, not perhaps, we are definitely going to show the way to the world. Our recent achievement of Chandrayaan, isn't it something that we don't need technology from any other country? We are technology developers, not technology seekers. Our technology will come at a much lower rate, affordable. And therefore, in future, when anyone comes to us for collaboration, we should say either we co-develop the technology or we'll give the technology to you. Hydrogen is going to be another success story of that nature, the kind of investments that government is making, and the well-planned program that is being put forward by MNRE under Sir's guidance. They have taken everything into consideration. So that's the way to move ahead. And the other good part is India is a growing country. We still have to develop. And we have young workforce of innovative, hardworking individuals. And the market also exists here. So while the rest of the world may have recession to various degrees, I'm sure we are always going to grow. And thank you, sir. Thank you for your leadership and guiding the country and taking country to next heights. It goes without saying, the Tata's culture, I think if we look at the world philanthropy, they have taught that word to the world. No one was talking 50 years back that we have to give back to the society. But in a way, for Tatas, it was always something. Tata is trust. It's the company where you can close your eyes and you can say that whatever they are doing is for the society, is for the betterment of the country as a whole. And you go to Jamshedpur, Tata Nagar, it's a different world. Everyone is so satisfied. Today we say that why people are so dissatisfied, I'm sure that's not the culture in any of the Tata companies. Everyone is so contented, whether it is work-wise, whether it is in terms of the work-life balance, and so on. I remember when Mr. Darbari said in the initial stages of Terry's development, somewhere it was, we will give PF 17% and not 12%, so that when these employees retire, they should have good money in hand. He always also said that leave encashment rules like work-life balance, he said only in cash up to 15 days, because 15 days they must spend with their families. So those were small little things which comes from Tata culture, and we are very proud to say that we are walking on the same path. So we would like to acknowledge the Tata culture, and I'm sure Mr. Siddharth Sharma and what all he listed over here, we are going to imbibe many more things of what is happening today. So thank you so much, Mr. Sharma, for your talk. And also, I'm sure we are going to disturb you time and again and get more guidance. Well, whatever we have achieved in Terry in the last 50 years, I'll also like to acknowledge that it's possible through the encouragement and support we receive from our governing council, and especially our chairman, Mr. Nitin Desai. Just earlier this week, we celebrated birthday of Dr. Pachauri, our founder, Director General. and it was not just a lecture. He also showed us a few of the interviews which spread over the last 4 decades. And I'm sure all my colleagues will join in saying that whatever he said even 4 decades ago, that is true today more than what it was said. So that is the kind of vision we are very fortunate to have from all our seniors. So thank you so much, sir. Always encouraging us, mentoring us. And last but not the least, I'd like to say that it's also a sort of Thanksgiving day for us, to all our partners, all our supporters, to have faith in Terry, and all my colleagues, because it's your hard work, it's your vision, it's your work which is speaking. What Terry is today is success of all of you. So thank you, all of you, for working with Terry. And I'm sure in next 50 years, we'll be able to achieve much more. I always say, initially, it takes more energy for car to get started. And then we start walking. It's like an aircraft. And now is the time that Terry has to fly. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving us a sneak peek to your association and learnings from Mr. Darbari Seth.
All the invitees and dignitaries are informed that they are to move to seminar hall in the Terry building, and the Terry colleagues sitting here, they are to move to Hub and Charminar for the tea.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.